afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at this webinar. My name is Mayura, and I'm from Biotech Connection Singapore. I'll be a moderator for today's exciting discussion with three leading innovators from Singapore's research and biotech ecosystem that we have with us today. A quick introduction of Biotech Connection. We're a non-profit organization, and our main mission is to promote entrepreneurship in healthcare. And we achieve this through various means, such as the webinar today. So if you'd like to find out more, please visit our website or sign up to the mailing list. What brings us together today are some essential stay-at-home conversations on the COVID-19 pandemic that's happening around us, and especially exploring how the biomedical community is responding and how they're contributing to bringing this health crisis under control. Diagnostic testing, or detecting the virus in patients, is really the first crucial step in determining the public health response and controlling the outbreak. 2 weeks ago, we spoke to clinician Dr. Timothy Barkham from Tan Tock Seng Hospital in Singapore about the efforts and challenges that they're undertaking at the front lines of the testing in the hospital setting. Today, we will go behind the scenes, and we're very fortunate to hear firsthand about some of the local efforts that have gone into developing the diagnostic kits and producing them under immense time pressure. And we will explore with the panelists the challenges and opportunities they have faced along their journey. So without further ado, let me introduce the speakers that we're very privileged to have with us today. I'll start by introducing Dr. Sydney Yee, CEO of Diagnostics Development Hub at A*STAR and Senior Advisor at Accelerate. Her team at DXD focuses on accelerating development of diagnostic technologies, and they were crucial in translating the R&D efforts and developing the first diagnostic kit for detecting SARS-CoV-2 called Fortitude, and obtaining provisional regulatory approval for its use. And this kit is now successfully deployed in over a dozen Singapore hospitals and has been sent globally to over 20 countries. So welcome, Sydney, and we look forward to hearing more about the development of the Fortitude kit. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lihan Tsao, co-founder and CEO of Mirexis, a Singapore-based biotech company which focuses on RNA diagnostics for cancer detection. So in Feb this year, Mirexis was engaged by A*STAR to manufacture and supply the Fortitude kit, and they have been instrumental in ramping up the production of this kit and enabling its wide distribution. So thank you for joining us today, Lihan, and for taking the time. And we look forward to hearing more about your efforts in manufacturing the kit. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce and welcome Dr. Tan Min Han, CEO and Medical Director of Lucens, a precision oncology company which is developing non-invasive liquid biopsy blood tests for early cancer detection. To support the battle against COVID-19, Lucens has developed a non-invasive saliva-based technology which can enable mass testing. So we look forward to hearing about this innovative technology, and thanks for your presence today, Min Han. So before we start the discussion, I'd just like to take a minute to thank these panelists for taking their time out from their busy schedules to speak to us today. We are extremely grateful for your incredible efforts for developing these test kits for the pandemic. The way the discussion will work today is we will first hear about the different efforts from each speaker and and the unique challenges that they have faced. So starting the journey from really translating the R&D work into the Fortitude kit, which we'll hear from Sydney, and then the subsequent manufacturing by Mirexis, and then we'll hear about the saliva-based kit as well from Lucens. And then in the second half of the webinar, we will have some common questions for all the speakers, where we would like to involve the audience. So we have over 250 audience participants right now. So please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box. Please do note that the chat has been disabled, so use the Q&A and also upvote the questions that you would like to be answered, and we'll try our best to answer them in the second half of the webinar. So yeah, with that, we'd like to start. Perhaps maybe Sydney, welcome to the webinar, and maybe you can share with us how DXD Hub became involved in the early stages of putting together the Fortitude kit, and what were the challenges with coordinating these efforts under immense time pressure with A*STAR and Tan Tock Seng.
Thank you, Mayura. Thank you for having me on this platform to share some of the exciting moments, ups and downs, challenges of how we've been working with the team and with the companies. But to start with, I just want to mention that it was quite a pleasant surprise to read in the paper today that the fourth budget is a 42 budget. Yeah, so very, very nice honor for the budget to be named actually after the first product that we developed as well. Of course, it was a coincidence. Um, and of course, the 42 actually was named as such for its own very, very same reason of why the budget was so named. The fact that amongst and amidst all the crises and the challenges that the country is able to work together. This is really truly a show of one Singapore effort to put everything together. And within A-Star is a one A-Star approach. So I'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the challenges and how we sort of overcame that. So first, to talk about DXD Hub. So DXD Hub is a national platform, and it's a national platform that was formed and led by A-Star, really for the purpose of translating R&D output from the lab into products that people can use in the bedside, and that someone can order, the clinicians can actually use, someone can adopt and deploy. And so that said, when we talk about translation of R&D output, it's not necessarily just translating R&D output from public institution, but we also work very closely with R&D private entities that actually have IPs that they need to work with a partner to accelerate that. So I think acceleration is key to really the strength of DXD Hub is, we're not just talking about product development, industrialization or product development, but is really to talk about the speed at which we are able to do that. And I need to emphasize that a little bit because the speed is really what makes a difference at the time of crisis. So specifically for 42, so I think over the last 6 years, so DXCR really is only about 6 years old. So over the last 6 years, what we focus a lot on is really building collaborations and building the network. And because we're talking about bridging, because we're talking about translating between R&D and the bedside, so the network of engagement that we built with companies, with public institutions, with clinical community, that was very, very important. So that really was sort of the main impetus at the beginning of this 42 story. And because when the crisis or when the outbreak happened, some of our our researchers and the clinicians have already started working on some tests that they had already started testing a few possibilities. So as soon as the sequence became widely known, we were able to very, very quickly get together with them. So it's not like we're starting at ground zero. It's actually starting at a platform that the teams are already working with people that they know. So we're not having to go and forge new partnerships to put things together. It is an existing partnership, and that was very important. And of course, DXC Hub being a public institution or a national platform, that we don't really take, so we do the translation. We do basically everything, industrialization, manufacturing, clinical onboarding, but we are not a commercial entity. So at the end of the day, our job, so first and foremost, is really to build solutions that would impact people directly. And of course, in doing so, we also hope to bring economic outcome. And one of the tools, of course, is to enable our enterprises. So because we are not ourselves the commercial entity, our job is really to enable commercial entity so that they can be the one that would take the products to the market. So after we've done that, the sort of optimization and development of the test, as part and parcel of our process of industrialization product development, we actually built in manufacturing. So I think in terms of manufacturing, it's probably the most commonly overlooked thing that a lot of our companies do, because I know a lot of our companies understand quality management system, they understand design, they understand product development, but I think a lot of times by the time they actually get to the product, they then step back and realize, somebody has to manufacture. And manufacturing is not just about manufacturing the kit, the product itself. It's the whole entire supply chain. It is really about warehousing, stock, and the sales and marketing, and the shipping, and the ordering and everything, the whole entire. So that's what manufacturing is. So I think that's something that I suppose from DXC Hub's perspective, because we built that as part of our product development industrialization process, we make sure that when we do that, we also built in the manufacturing processes. So it makes it easier when we have to work with a commercial entity. That whole manufacturing process can also be transferred to the local enterprises. But of course, there are a lot of, in Singapore, we have enterprises that are not so ready, and then we have enterprises that are very ready. So there's a whole spectrum of readiness of our enterprises. So it really also makes it very flexible in terms of how much our enterprises need to work with us. I think in terms of working with Morexus, it was actually sort of a natural progression. It's not, like I said, it's not like we had to do this and then we went around and looked for different pieces of the puzzle and try and put them together. So with Morexus, we've been working with them for many years. In fact, we had recently just launched a product together with Morexus in the oncology area. So it is a company, a group, a team that we're very, very familiar with. They have a very, very good capability and expertise to be able to receive. So I think when we talk about transferring, it's not a matter of we transferring. It's also a matter of whether the receiver is able to be able to develop the framework, the infrastructure to be able to receive. So like what they say, it takes two to clap, and I think that partnership has worked out really, really well. So dealing with the challenges of the limitation of time and the fact that we really needed to get something out as soon as possible, I think all that really helped. So I talked about the fact that so I really have to emphasize this point, the fact that Singapore it's incredible from that perspective, because I have dealt with not just companies in Singapore. I've dealt with companies from the Southeast Asia, from Europe, and from the US. I have not seen a country like Singapore that is so supportive of local enterprises. It is just amazing. It is just amazing. If you are a company from another country, you're going to be shaking your head and you wish that you are one of the companies in Singapore, really. And so that's actually what we have done. The government has taken a very, very one Singapore approach. HSA, we had the most progressive regulatory agency in the world. Very, very supportive and very, very progressive. And MOH, they make things possible for the clinical community to adopt innovations. And of course, our reference lab, MPHL, it's just everybody just got together to deal with this. And therefore, we were able to do this from really the point of optimization to HSA approval to deployment actually within less than a month, within 3 weeks. And within A-Star, of course, DXC Hub is not the only entity that has done this. This would not have been possible if it is just DXC Hub. So I have to also make that very clear. It is only possible because we have, of course, EDDC, the group that designed the assay, and we have BII that does all the, every day, the researcher at BII makes sure that our assay stays on top of the virus mutation. So every time something happens, we very, very quickly go back to the lab and we reiterate, and then we push it out the same workflow. Of course, DXC Hub is very small. So because of the time pressure and the urgency, we actually literally just called out for help, and we have tons of volunteers from all the 20 RIs from A-Star that basically volunteered to work in DXC Hub to help us get this through. So, you know, really is really just the story of you know, everyone having the same enemy, the, you know, same goal, and you know, everyone was able to just work together. Forget about your NDA and RCA and all kinds of agreement. Everybody just wanted to get it out and you know, approach the same enemy. So that was very, very, just very, very rewarding to know that humanity actually does work in times of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's very inspiring to see that, you know, the collaboration and the joint efforts were really what were key in, you know, getting this process through very quickly. So I guess maybe just, you know, changing gears a little bit in terms of the test kits. You know, I understand that there were quite a few parties that you've sent them out to now, and you know, how have you, DXD or A-Star as a whole, you know, ensured that the kits are directed to parties that need them the most and as fast as possible? So do you have like a priority list of sorts?
Well, actually, our priority is always Singapore first. Yeah, so first and foremost, we're going to make sure that our people are taken care of. So that's always a priority and remains a priority. So we make sure that we have enough, in fact, more than enough for Singapore. And then, of course, you know, working with different agencies, different ministries, we do get different requests from other countries, and that would be, you know, sort of managed quite independently. But first and foremost, we make sure that we have more than enough to serve ourselves.
Great. Yeah, thanks for answering that. Yeah, so thanks, Sydney. And you know, I think we'll talk about sort of how the efforts that have gone into sort of really ramping up the manufacturing of this kit. So you know, you mentioned a little bit about the collaboration and working together that you've had with Mirexis. So perhaps I can you know, ask Li-Han and engage you now. Maybe you can share a little bit about you know, how you have been involved with making the kits, and particularly, you know, what capacities or capabilities you had built up in Mirexis, you know, over years of operation that really enabled you to you know, ramp up and help with the manufacturing.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. Yeah, I think it's been, like Sydney said, it's been a very rewarding experience. Really, we didn't have to sign licensing, we didn't have to sign RCA, you know, before we get on to work, which is really what I think most people will want to. The paperwork are important, I'm not saying they're not, but in this experience, I still recall, I think the first time we met Sydney and Philip on this particular matter, I was attending a sort of a Team A, Team B business continuity meeting at A-Star with some of the QA folks in A-Star, and suddenly the door opened and Philip and Sydney walked in. I was like, you guys are very serious about this business continuity meeting. So, but then came in and Philip threw a question and says, are you able to make kits? I look at Sydney looked at me and said, yeah, that's what Mirexis and DXD has been doing for the collaborating for the last 6 years. And so from that conversation to the tech transfer, which almost started immediately that same afternoon to just, hub folks and Miraxus folks running back and forth between Biopolis and Tukang, where the manufacturing site is, to get this up and running, making 2 lots the same week. By the second week, we are looking at 100,000 tests produced. And all the HSA submission, the CE marking, and all the other regulatory experience. So it's been a roller coaster ride, very, very rewarding. But I would say collectively, we did face a lot of challenges along the way. Because if you look at the speed of launching such a kit, it's just unprecedented in the tradition of a medical device. I think from developer to regulators to manufacturers, we're not quite used to the idea of saying, hey, there's a disease, can you get something designed, developed, validated, and manufactured and regulatory approved within 3 to 4 weeks? It's just not the way that we operate. But I echo Cindy that, with this one Singapore approach with everybody in A-Star, HSA, TTSH, our National Health Public Lab, and HSA, of course, Singapore put it off. And right now, we were able to ensure adequate supply of the test kits to fulfill all of Singapore's needs since beginning or mid of February. So really record speed in getting a kit from design to the field. Now, and Cindy has also elaborated on what is actually manufacturing, which is, I think in most people's mind is you have a factory, you have workers inside and start making things. And if I take one of the kits, right? So this is a 42 kit that contains enough reagents for 200 people. And when we look at this kit, it doesn't look too complicated to make. You open it, it says it's a box, it's an IFU, it's 10 tubes. So how difficult can that be, right? But even this, from, I think, Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, from the very first kit to now, we probably have undergone 7 to 8 iterations, from the way we design the box to, what kind of tubes, what kind of caps, what kind of labels, and how do we print the IFU. So a lot of work gone into not only the performance of the kit, but also the usability as we send this to not only the Singapore labs, but a lot more of the less experienced labs in the neighboring countries or in other parts of the world. So I think, at this point, we are no longer talking about manufacturing scale, but is Singapore able to launch a product not only to be used locally, but able to help other people around the world, and to make sure that this product is highly accurate and highly usable, and at the same time, still relatively affordable. So we have seen bottlenecks from initially not having enough sort of the kit boxes to not having enough plastics to then delay of shipment coming in to Singapore because all the flight cancellations. So we had to deal with a lot of things which I would say in our day job that we don't have to deal with because of the COVID situation. So it was really a team effort. Miraxus and DXD Hub folks talk on a daily basis still to look at how do we take all the improvements that's been made at A-Star, validated at TTSH and other clinical centers, and then translate that into the next version of the kit and the next version of the kit, and work with HSA to solve all that regulatory requirement, which is constantly evolving because the COVID-19 situation is evolving. So I would say it's been a very rewarding experience, and it has really challenged our own capabilities, not only in manufacturing, but in technical support, to logistics, to regulatory affairs.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's great to hear that there's so much complexity involved with numbers of iterations of kits you go through, as well as the technical support and usability of the kit. Thanks for sharing your views. Just wanted to ask in terms of what would, if there are other local startups who are interested to help with scaling up and distribution in the future, what are some of the channels that I guess they can access for, licensing and, being able to help in this time?
I mean, as Sydney said, we also feel that it's very fortunate to be a biotech company in Singapore, because how supportive our government has been to help local startup to ramp up the capabilities, both in product, to manufacturing, commercialization, through the works with our local IHLs. So I think the information in terms of availability of technologies and new products that can be licensed has been very transparent. So if we are plugged into the ecosystem, having a constant exchange with Accelerate, the DXP Hub, as well as to the NUS or NTU Tech Transfer Office, that's where we are constantly bombarded with new ideas, new possible technologies, and new products and new integrations or solutions. So I think if I can make a suggestion is for local startups to be plugged in with all the tech transfer office, and to seek collaboration across the board, whether it's with A-Star or with our clinical institutions, and knowing that you guys are running all these seminars, I think that's another source of information. But overall, I think that has been very transparent. Regarding licensing, in our experience working with the many institutions locally, that has never been challenging, because we deal with Chinese institutions, we deal with US institutions, Japanese institutions. So I can confidently say that the licensing process, the discussion is always easiest in Singapore, because of the very supportive environment that our government has set, right? So it has never occurred to us that the licensing fees is not fair. In fact, sometimes we and Sydney, please don't ask Anand to quote me on this, but sometimes we feel like, really so low. Yeah. So I think all local biotech can get access to the technology. So all it takes is just reach out, ask what is there, and then speak to the people. And if you find that to be useful, then just go into the licensing discussion. It's not difficult.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing those tips. I'm sure a lot of the startups will greatly benefit.
It was too low, Lihan.
Don't ask Anand to quote me on that, but I mean, compared to what Harvard will run the price, I think we have been very, very reasonable. I would think truly A-Star, NUS, our clinical institutions has been very reasonable in terms of licensing costs, because I think overall we want to push out products, we want to push out solutions out of Singapore. So it's truly a one Singapore approach, and we very much appreciate it.
Great, thanks so much for sharing. So we'll move on to hearing a bit more about Lucence's new kit. So Minh-Han, maybe you could share a bit about the safer sample kit. What were the motivations behind developing this kit, and what was sort of the timeline of events from the virus outbreak to when you decided to undertake the development and manufacturing?
So thank you for the introduction. As background, I am a medical oncologist by training, and Lucence is actually a services company. We focus on supplying ultra-sensitive liquid biopsy tests to the region, and we have labs both in Palo Alto in California as well as in Singapore. When COVID-19, the pandemic started, I think we certainly asked ourselves what was the best thing we could do to react. And actually, as we looked at our background knowledge and the work that we had done in the past, we realized two things. Firstly, like Sydney said, this is not alien to us, because we were actually the first company to deploy a testing service that covered both viruses as well as cancer-related markers in one blood test. And we had been supplying this since 2018. Secondly, we also realized that actually we had done quite a lot of work on optimizing sample collection for viruses in saliva in the past. This is part of the ultra-sensitive detection that we had envisaged for head and neck cancers, and which also had a human papillomavirus. So in a sense, what was challenging for us was actually the decision to take on the role of a manufacturer, as Lihan has alluded to and Sydney has also alluded to. It's very different from a services company. And in the commercial world, I think supplying a need, this can come from providing a service or from providing a product. And I think I really have to thank both our internal stakeholders, the company, the staff, the the board for very much aligning with that goal, and as well as the community. And as Sydney and Lihan know, this couldn't have been done without a lot of work with the stakeholders. I'm going to say the technology is based on the idea that COVID-19, the test that a good test, a great test also needs a good sample. We recognize that a lot of the bottlenecks today actually come from sampling, the front-end sampling, as well as the back-end supply chain reagents, which I think Lihan and Sydney are doing a great job on. The difficulty of achieving sampling is not just a question of the right swabs and the right media, but also the right healthcare personnel, the time needed to disinfect, the locations, the invasiveness of any procedure. And I think over the last 2 months, there is increasing data that saliva may form an alternative, non-invasive route towards COVID-19 diagnosis. This is not entirely new. Hong Kong has been doing salivary diagnosis since February 2020. That's about 3 months ago. So there is precedent for widespread deployment of salivary diagnostics. I think the technology, we are familiar that saliva contains RNases and that sample degradation starts at the very point of collection. And over time, and if the sample is not chilled immediately, this leads to a problem of degradation and false negatives. The kit is meant to address the difficulty of ensuring a cold chain, especially in large countries and where places where the availability of chilling may not be quite so may not be quite so widespread. So I think the idea is what the kit addresses. The kit addresses here. The kit addresses is the issue of the bottleneck in swabbing. It allows for less invasive mass testing, and we look forward to working with A-Star and other stakeholders to make this happen. And I think towards this, we have made 10,000 kits available to the region at no cost, and we have been working with government stakeholders as well, both in Singapore, which is always our priority, as well as in the region to do this. So I think in summary, the journey between services to manufacturing, as Sydney has very, very much described, I think it's a major, it was a sort of a, I wouldn't call it a pivot because we are still supplying ultra-sensitive cancer testing. We supply this to our oncologists, and cancer doesn't know it's COVID-19 time, right? It's even in the last 4 months with 100,000 deaths, there have been 3 million cancer-related deaths. So that work continues. We hope the technology helps to address a key need, and that's the front-end swabbing bottleneck, which I think the region and the world hopes to bypass. And yeah, I think that's what I would have to say about the journey we have made.
Thanks for sharing the journey. Yeah, I think certainly great to understand a bit more about, the differences between sort of services and, the challenges in manufacturing these kits. So, you mentioned, Minhan, about, the decentralized testing, mass testing. Could you, just to extend on that, comment on, how would the decentralized testing really change the scene for countries, and what are your plans for sort of distribution of these kits to other countries, outside of Singapore?
I think the question of mass testing is something that government institutions all around the world, they are looking at this question. How can this be best achieved to restore economic sectors? How can this be achieved to bring back normality as far as possible? I think the answers to these lie both not just in technology, but also in the workflow processes, the manpower required. So it's not no single technology is going to be the panacea for this. I do think that saliva testing has come under the spotlight as an opportunity to bypass at least one of these bottlenecks. I would say that how we all get there together, it's not clear now, but what's clear is we certainly need to ask what's needed to bring the world back to as normal a state as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Minhan. So yeah, we would, open the floor to questions that are coming in now as well. And also, in particular, that maybe I can start off with, asking you guys, obviously you have changed and pivoted your strategy, when the pandemic started. What was the challenges in that? You obviously had some projects ongoing. Did you shift entirely to your focus on now, looking at specifically into COVID tests, or do you still have projects going? I think Minhan alluded to a little bit that, cancer efforts are still ongoing. So maybe all of you, any of you could share that.
Maybe I'll volunteer first. Yeah, so like Minhan said, I mean, yes, while the world is focusing on looking at COVID-related mortality, but if you look at during the same 3 months, the number of cancer patients that have suffered and passed on, the number is way larger than COVID. And while we probably don't know when it will be completely back to normal, but we know it will. So the other work has to go on. I would say, I mean, honestly speaking, it has definitely impacted our other line of work. So most of our cancer trials was largely impacted because of the suspension of a lot of enrollment. Fortunately, we could, run the samples that has been collected in the past, and there is also an opportunity to ask new questions regarding. We've been working on lung cancer field for a long time. We're running one of the largest trials globally, looking at about 20,000 people in various countries across ethnic groups. So at this point, we know that COVID impacts the lung function. So does that put some of these patients at a more vulnerable position towards lung cancer treatment, or does having COVID actually predisposes people for lung diseases? So I think post-COVID, the way that we're going to view some of these disease, including cancer, will be different. We have to take into account the impact of sort of the having an increasing infectious disease angle on this. Like Minhan said, they've been at the forefront of measuring both virus as well as other cancer genes. And we do appreciate the angle. We believe that moving forward, cancer research will also not be the same cancer research as before, and we have to ask other questions. But overall, I don't think all of us pivoted entirely towards COVID. We still have our day job, or now it's becoming a night job to run. And with the hope that once COVID is over, once we're back to the new norm, that we can carry on with doing cancer research and launch new products that will help the cancer patients.
Yeah, It's the same at DXD Hub as well. Of course, we do have many other projects running at the same time. So obviously before COVID-19, at any one point we were doing, 2,000 projects at any one point. And COVID actually turned a lot of things upside down. Like what Lihan was saying, our day job has become night job. And because we do 24/7, we run in shifts, so we actually we don't really stop working. And so what we have learned actually is also to recalibrate some of the projects a little bit. It actually has given us time to step back and recalibrate that. And also, just to also mention that again, that our partners, a lot of our partners are not just public institutions, but also commercial companies. So a lot of our commercial partners are not necessarily already equipped to do medical devices. So we have taken this opportunity, instead of in the pre-COVID-19 days, we would be doing a lot of things, rushing a lot of things concurrently, both trying to do the development as well as trying to get the quality management system online. But now, because we can't really do the actual development work, we are able to spend a bit more time and deliberate over the quality management system to get the companies, to take more time to get themselves ready, which is equally important. So actually, as it turned out, it's not a bad thing. It is something that needs to be done anyway. So there's no time loss. It's just a reallocation of how we spend the time. Perhaps that's going to be the new normal for everything else.
You guys are certainly working hard with day and night jobs, but it's good to see that this has been an opportunity for everyone as well, in terms of relooking at the projects that you have been doing and furthering them as well post-COVID. So one of the questions that has come into the Q&A is actually for Sydney, in terms of what are the typical challenges in technology transfer to commercial manufacturing, and what are you looking for in commercial partner outside of Singapore?
So let me really address the challenge first. I think, I suppose the bulk of our so-called commercial partners are actually small, medium enterprises, which includes really the startups. And I think there's a lot to do with the culture of our business partners, our commercial partners. So I think the commercial partners need to have a sort of a progressive culture, a culture that is accepting, that's able to accept innovations to a certain extent, but also to be able to understand that there is a difference between research and, once you are in the manufacturing phase, you can't just simply change things on the go. So there's a discipline to that. And also for the tech transfer partner to understand, to be able to know what they don't know. So to me, it's a lot more of that than the actual capability and infrastructure. I think all that helps, but to me, it's not the most important thing. In fact, we had recently enabled a local enterprise that started with almost zero expertise in doing diagnostics, specifically IVDs, and they have been so able to accept what they don't know and to be able to learn and put in a lot of the effort, that culture of willing to learn and to assimilate with the pace that we need to go in order to get this going, that I think things just worked out really well. So to me, it's a lot more than the capabilities and infrastructure. It's more in the mindset. So I think that's really what we look for in the, we also have worked with other tech transfer partners that really want the cake and eat it. They want everything from us, but they don't want to share anything. So we really cannot work with partners like that. You know, for us to do a tech transfer, like I said, it is a two-way street. It is not just us transferring. We need an exchange of communication. So when there's no communication, it's only one-way street. We transferring, that doesn't work.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think definitely an attitude and an ability to work well together, I'm sure are key. So one of the other, changing gears a little bit in terms of manufacturing and producing these kits, how have you all strike the balance between sort of quality assurance and at the same time the urgency of getting things done?
Oh, if you're asking me,
any one of you.
No compromise. Yeah, there's no compromise to quality, no matter how urgent it is. So to me, that is the most important thing, because we have to understand that this is a medical product, a medical device. People put a lot of trust in it. You only get one chance to get it right. So no compromise to quality.
Right, I'll echo Cindy on that. I think, where there was a huge rush to get something out, that everyone in that process is fully conscious. If we rush and compromise on the quality, that means the product will go to the market for maybe 3 days and get taken out of the market. So there's no point rushing for that 24 hours, 48 hours and compromise on the quality. And because of the long-standing relationship we had with the hub, I think a lot of these conversations, because we knew each other's frequency. So I think that was something that probably helped. So we didn't have bottlenecks, we didn't have misunderstanding. We just went on the teams and says, you do this, I do that. Then we get on with the work and with the mutual quality assurance. During the initial transfer, DXD will run the experiments in Chromos, and we run experiments in Tukang, and we exchange the data. And subsequently, for a very long time, every production batch after we QC, we send it to DXD for QC. So it does add an additional 3 hours of work, but that way I think everybody sleeps better at night, knowing that it has passed through not only one gateway but two. And so I totally echo that. No compromise on quality, and it's better for the product. Otherwise, if a potentially faulty product goes into clinics, trust us, we probably don't want team to be calling us at night. Yeah, that's not going to be a very nice conversation to have.
Yeah. Well, Morexus and Lucens are the two companies that actually have very, very good culture of communication. we communicate 24/7. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and great to hear the additional sort of stringent measures you guys are undertaking as well. There's a question for Minhan here from the Q&A. So is Lucens currently working with the Singapore government to incorporate it as a part of overall testing strategy, your saliva kits, in addition to sort of PCR and serological testing? And if not, what more is needed? So do you need more studies on sensitivity of saliva to be adopted as a mainstream strategy?
I think the question of saliva testing is definitely an active investigation all around the world, both in Singapore as well as overseas. The obviously adoption of anything does require evidence, and different cities will adopt at different speeds as well. And I think making sure that any change is well validated, that's definitely a key part of evidence generation. And I would say it's definitely an open question, especially in different many cities out there are already reporting data. What's clear is that the method to how saliva is being collected, that's key, because saliva is actually made up of both salivary gland fluids, gum fluids, as well as a mixture of sputum. And there are a lot of complexities, you would imagine, that's to even spitting, right? And achieving the right mixture of fluids. And that's only for the operator. Is this going to be a self-collected saliva, or is this going to be a supervised collection by someone making sure you swab your own mouth the right way? There are some complexities here, and in the lab at the back end, there are other complexities. How is thick saliva or sputum or mixture of sputum going to be processed? How is that going to affect limit of detection? I think these are all interesting and open technical questions that are being addressed right now.
Yeah, and I think just an extension to that, there's another question that's been upvoted quite a bit is, what are your thoughts on would saliva testing replace nasal swabs? So maybe you can talk about the comparison between, nasal swabs and saliva collection.
So I'll take a global view here, which is that data is being generated in many different cities today. I think in Hong Kong, saliva testing has been the majority approach ever since the Hong Kong Hospital Authority sent out its guidelines in February and March. In the United States, this is being actively investigated. I think we do see, universities such as Yale and UCLA publish on this. I think what's clear is that this is going to be an area of tremendous impact if it comes through, because it opens up questions on accessibility of testing, cost of testing, how this can be best leveraged towards achieving, trying to bring testing to the right places so that the economic sectors can be restored. And I think it's very much going to be the next question that governments and regulators and companies need to manage. And in a way, as I talk about all this, really it's the effort to do this and motivating our team. That's something which the great thing is actually like what Lee Han and Sydney said, things just change, and motivating a private company is it's clear, it's much easier when there is a clear mission that everyone understands, which is to try to make something accessible. And it's been an interesting sort of journey to take this forward. And we are definitely very much looking forward to seeing how some of these products can help.
Yeah, thank you. So while we're on the topic of sort of comparing the testing kits and different methods, there's also another question which has been upvoted the most, which is all about how does the Fortitude kit compare with other kits in the world, in terms of usability and workflow for clinicians. I mean, you guys, Sydney and Lihan, spoke a little bit about the many iterations you've already been through, so I'm sure you're very much on top of that. Maybe you can just give some comments for the question.
Maybe Lihan can start.
Sure.
Okay, I'll shamelessly say Fortitude has a very good design. I think RT-PCR is RT-PCR. There's really not much ways that you can deviate from adding the enzyme to the master mix to the primer probe mix. Right. If you look at Fortitude, we have 7 components, 10 tubes inside a box that's capable of running 200 reactions. And it's been deployed in more than 20 countries, from the most advanced labs to some of the newly set up, less experienced labs in developing countries that are not used to deal with high throughput RT-PCR. And the fact that, we get a lot of questions, not so much on, oh, how do you pipette, or I have pipetting variations, blah, blah, blah. It's more coming back and says, how do you set up the different instruments? How do you adjust, the baseline? So it's more questions of regarding instruments so far we have heard from the many labs that deployed Fortitude. Never once did we hear, oh, I don't like how your tube is designed, or there's too many components, or the pipetting volume is right. Never once till today did we hear any feedback on that. We also have not had any adverse effect reporting from any of the labs. I think it says a lot about the initial design by Masa as well as Sebastian, and the great work that team did at TTSH to validate the kit. So we were off to a good start, And the fact that Fortitude was deployed much earlier as compared to, I would say, even the Roche kit, the thermal kit, that means we had a lot more data. And what that translated into, as Cindy has mentioned, is a constant update and upgrade of Fortitude for better clinical performance. And at the end of the day, once the clinical performance is there, once we are staying ahead of mutations, we are always updating Fortitude. While it is a regulatory kind of nightmare, and I'm sure Dr. Rama and Danny from HSA hates us for sending them change requests all the time, but I think the clinical feedback has been quite well. That's also, I would say, in the field, when people started BGI in China, started with one single target, and that's also how Fortitude started with single target, and then we went on to update that into dual targets, and there are talks of having 3 targets or 4 targets. Fortitude will continue to evolve, but in terms, I would say, the performance and usability, we had no complaints, and it's very comforting to hear, even people in the countryside of Panama saying, hey, this is such an easy to use kit as compared to what they have run from China, from Germany, or assembled some of the recipes that CDC has published. So I'll be shameless, and I'll say I'm conflicted, but we feel that Fortitude has been well designed and is quite user-friendly.
I'm going to jump in here and say that as a services company and a services lab that's also running COVID-19 testing, that I fully support and agree that Lihan, that Fortitude is an excellent kit. So we are the users, and we are happy to say that it's a sensitive and a excellent kit.
Thank you. Actually, I was just going to add something along that line, that Minghan, as a medical clinician as well, probably can appreciate that. The medical community is probably one of the most picky community in the world. It's probably, if you look at in terms of product adoption, they are probably the most difficult to change any standard in terms of if you want the medical community to change their practice to use a different test. So they are very picky in that sense. So if the test doesn't work to their satisfaction, they will drop it in a flash. The fact that I guess instead of answering that question, maybe just the fact that Fortitude is one of the most widely deployed tests in the world, I suppose, in terms of the number of users and labs that it has been deployed to. It's probably sort of testament to the not just the usability, but also the performance of the test. And of course, I think, as Lihan mentioned, it is also partly because we don't stop at where we are. We are continuously coming up with improvement. So I don't know if people in the audience know, but A-Star Fortitude kit recently actually had sort of obtained the FDA EUA approval with one of our users in the US. So I think that also is another sort of testament to the sort of the quality and the performance of the test.
Great, thanks for sharing, everyone. So while we're talking about also the Fortitude kit, in terms of regulatory pathway in Europe, I think there's a lot of interest here about the safer kit, Minhan, especially if you're able to share a little bit about what stage of the application for sort of regulatory approval is your kit at, and what is the journey for so far?
I'm happy to share. Obtained the ISO 13485 for the manufacturing process, and we look forward to taking this further. Within Singapore, the kit has obtained a Class A device registration, and for the United States, I think we are certainly looking at what is achievable and possible in terms of the FDA EUA.
Great, thank you. So I guess there's a question here for all the panelists. Based on your experience of commercialization of COVID-19 diagnostics, what is your advice for local startups or SMEs that are not government linked to be able to compete and commercialize effectively COVID-19 solutions in Singapore? Yeah,
Well,
so maybe
neither of the two companies today is government linked, so maybe they can talk about it.
Ming-Han, would you like to go first?
I'm happy to take that question. I think at the heart, any company is about speaking only from our experience. It's about trying to put together a technological solution to fulfill a need. I don't think anyone expected this need to arise in the last 3 months, and as also we noted, it was only because there was this external challenge that we looked at ourselves and asked what was necessary for us to respond to this. And so in essence, this is about the human. It's about the human that has both the ability to create the technology, to manufacture the technology, as well as the front end to deliver the technology. So I would say that there are going to be new needs, and not all of them are going to be in diagnostics. And really, in looking at our own team, looking at our own people, and we want to build that team and people. And so, yes, we are looking to hire people across all areas. I think it's very much a question of building that technology, figuring out how to motivate the team to put together a solution that can be delivered. So I don't think the words like compete, commercialize, I don't think it's quite like that. It's more about how we can address that need successfully out there.
Thank you. I think also, there's a question here for Li-Han, which is on a slightly different note. It's, Mirexis is a leader in microRNA research. What is your take on using microRNAs to fight coronavirus? Or, would you be pursuing these kind of opportunities?
Incidentally, and Sydney knows, earlier this year in January 6 and 7, we actually held a symposium in collaboration with A*STAR and NUS to mark the 10 years of microRNA research in Singapore. And George Kaling, coming from MD Anderson, he's a big guy on virus and microRNA. So there are multiple angles we can look at this, and coronavirus also contains microRNA. And we actually designed a couple of microRNA assays on the suspected or microRNA targets in coronavirus, which give some pretty good sensitivity in the regions where there are less secondary structure. So I think from the biomarker point of view, designing a microRNA coronavirus assay is entirely possible. But I think what's more intriguing to us, and if we take HCV as an example, HCV takes sort of employs the human microRNA 122 to assist in the replication of virus inside human. So there was a phase 2 therapeutic trial to look at inhibitor of human 122 to actually stop HCV from replicating. And we suspect once we know a little bit more about the microRNAs in coronavirus, there may be potential angle as well. And hopefully that will offer sort of a different therapeutic perspective on how we can tackle infectious disease. But as you know, microRNA mechanism is less well understood at this point. So a lot more research needs to go into that. But that's our night job. So yeah, both biomarkers as well as therapeutic angle on that, and between virus and the host interaction.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it sounds very exciting. So maybe in terms of shifting gears a little bit, I've talked a lot about the kits and the comparisons and where they are at. Something that I think has been alluded to a little bit so far is really motivating the teams and, getting the right people and the right operations in place. So, there's been so much disruption over the last few months globally. There's been changes to workforce, and you guys are working sort of day and night shifts. How have you managed to keep your teams motivated and, manage to get everyone to work through? And, what are some of the tips maybe you can share?
Okay, so I go first. So I talked about that a little bit earlier. I think is that common enemy, common goal. It's like in fighting in a war, for example. Everybody has the same enemy. So that in itself, I think is kind of self-motivating. Having said that, doing this, day and night type non-stop working really can wear you down. I mean, it's just physically wearing people down. So sometimes it can affect the mentality, the mental strength a little bit. So I think, at least within DXCL, I have to say that, from my personal perspective, I've learned to make sure that I'm not one of those general that send my troops out in the front line and I sit in my back office, just directing. I make sure that I'm out in the front line with them, and that really has helped because they see that we don't just talk, we actually do it together with them. So I would like to think that has made a difference to really just to get the team together.
Right. Any of you, Lihan or Mihan, want to comment, especially in biotech companies?
Right. I think everyone in the manufacturing side in Marex is still on an adrenaline rush. So to talk about what is the number of kits we can produce per week without having any QC failure. So they are still competing with each other. Who can stick the sticker the fastest? Who can fold the IFU the fastest? So they are having a lot of fun themselves, knowing that they're producing something that's going to be shipped to the various countries and actually saving lives. So I think that has been very much self-motivating to the point that, I was talking to our HR and says, do we need to sort of consider kind of welfare, special bonuses and all these things? And the people are like, that's not what we're working hard for. Although I'm sure, at the end of the year, they will expect, hey, I think this year bonus should be higher than last year. But at least at this point, they are running 12-hour, 16-hour shift without any complaints. But I think one of the things we did was, of course, to keep feeding them, just give them the sugar rush. So that has helped. We haven't resorted to using wine and beer to calm the nerves down. I think they are very much still on the adrenaline rush. But I think the fact that everyone knows that they are producing something and the quality matters as a life and death situation has really been the basis of just working hard. Since I think it's been 100 days or 3 months, but everyone is still going strong.
Yeah, I want to echo the challenges that both Sydney and Lihan have alluded to. It's been a interesting period. I'm going to say that in addition, of course, to the obvious challenge and motivation in front of us, there has also been the added complication of work from home guidelines, and these have also impacted operations to some extent. At the same time, we understand that how we respond to these challenges is that there are many other stakeholders depending on us to deliver. And I think we have grown the team over these 2 months from about 50 plus people to about 70 plus people, and that's about integrating them. We need to ensure that the right culture, the right goals, all these have been tremendously accelerated during this period. And how things are going to work out, we really don't know, because that's part of it. We can't look more than, a couple of weeks in the future. But what we do know is this: there is a tremendous need now, resolving, dealing, addressing that need in the next year or two. That's going to be crucial, not just for the company, but for the people around us. And one of the things I've really been very heartened, and it's not just about us, it's really been about also the commercial vendors who work with us, the people who constructed a partition for us in over a weekend, even though they had so much difficulty getting their workers, the people who went through their supply chains just to make sure we had the extraction kits, etc. So it takes a community to solve all these problems.
Right, thank you. Just aware of, we're getting close towards the end of the webinar. Thank you for sharing, all of your thoughts, your experiences, and your challenges so candidly with us today. Just as a, final wrap-up question, if you can comment, very quickly, after all of this has blown over, how do you think the biomedical community would have changed, or what impact has this brought?
Okay, so I go first again. So maybe from different aspects, I think in terms of the industry, we will be seeing a lot more technology component in the medical device industry. I think now we're talking about there's going to be a lot more automation, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's in addition to the sort of the standard med tech that we're talking about. We're talking about apps and analytics, but very little automation. But now we're seeing a lot of that needs to happen. So we will see a lot more of the integration. And of course, in terms of the capability of something like what DHC Hub is doing, I think that speed element will continue to need to happen in order to deal with a situation like this ever happening again. Well, I'm talking as if it's already over, but actually, to continue to deal with the situation. And personal front, I think we are learning to, because we've been talking about this work-life balance for a long time. Work-life balance meaning, okay, sometimes maybe we can try and work from home. Nobody ever does that, or used to never, do that. But now, because we are put in a situation where we have no choice and we do it, and we realize actually it's workable. It is not ideal, but it's workable, and we can make it work. And if we, I guess when we are actually given a choice, when we're talking about post-COVID, maybe it really does give us some food for thought into really being able to do a work-life balance of, maybe we can do a lot of things from home, and we can do less travel. Instead of traveling to meet someone face to face, maybe we can do business like that. And I think if we think like that in general, hopefully that would make the, lower carbon footprint and the pollution and everything in general. I think maybe it would, it would be a better place. So I like to always, recently I saw this one clip. It's quite interesting. They refer to, because we always talk about Vision 2020, and that's actually indeed it's it is the vision that we're getting in the year 2020.
Thank you. Ben, if you'd like to add anything.
Maybe I can add on to that. I think going through the COVID, having a one Singapore approach. Sort of showed us how resourceful, innovative, and collaborative the ecosystem is. And we all know that Singapore domestic market is small, and all the startups and SMEs are collectively all reaching out to the bigger market. And it's just the fact that we can so quickly, working with the A-Star or the clinical institutions to come up with product solutions means I think the ecosystem is really taking shape very nicely. We're building up various technology, manufacturing capabilities, as well as, or more importantly, the team. I think all of us are getting a very good experience. An army without having go through war is very different from one that's coming back from the battlefield. So I think the ecosystem will be a lot more ready to tackle greater challenges, to go to the markets which were unknown to us. So I'm hopeful that after COVID, it'll be a lot more vibrant. And allow me to shamelessly just advertise one last time. We are also hiring. We're looking for people across the spectrum. So please let us know if you are interested to do a day and night shift job.
Yeah, we are also hiring. Yeah, by the way.
Great to hear. I hope you guys get a lot of requests soon after this webinar. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing, your thoughts and your experiences so far. We really appreciate the time that you've taken out from your day and night jobs. So thank you very much, and we wish you and your teams and colleagues the very best in your efforts, which I'm sure will be continuing for some time. And we'd also like to thank our attendees who've stayed with us for over an hour. And with this, I'd like to close the session and also thank the ASTAC, especially ASTAC Copcoms, as well as Lucens and Morexis, for really your efforts in bringing together today's webinar. So next up, we also do have some continuing webinar series, not on COVID, but on the regulatory landscape. So if you would like to listen to that, do look up our webinar, and we have one, look up our website, and we have one this Friday. So thank you everyone for your attention and for your time. Thank you again to our speakers. We really appreciate your insights, and I'm sure the community has gotten a lot out of your chat today. And yeah, thank you, and I hope everyone has a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.